Oh, hi, I didn't see you there. I was just making my Szechuan chili oil to go with the Dan Dan noodles later. Trying this for the first time. The chief ingredients include some oil, a lot more red pepper flakes than I'm really prepared to deal with the consequences, and the chief ingredient, the Szechuan peppercorn. Rare item, novelty item. You can get it shipped from Amazon. It has a numbing property for the tongue. My colleague Ron Bowling says that once upon a time in medieval England it was worth more than its own weight in gold. What were we talking about? Ah, that's right. Gao Xingjian, the playwright who's played Bus Stop, we're going to have to read. I'll give you a few notes on Gian. Conveniently. Gao, and we call him by his the first name for Chinese and most Asians. First name comes first, or the last name comes first, so you call him by the surname Gao. Is born 1940. He lives still today. He's been a French citizen since 1998. His father was a banker, mother was an amateur actress. Between the two of them, they raised him for a good middle class life. He started playwriting early on in the Cultural Revolution, which we'll talk about in a moment, late 60s through the 70s. He winds up having to burn an entire manuscript of his writing. Since 1986, his works have been banned in China. In 1987, he left altogether, and by 1989, not coincidentally the year of the Tiananmen massacre, he is effectively been living in exile. So his principal works are Bus Stop, which we're reading for class, another play called Fugitives, which takes place outside of the Tiananmen massacre, a long novel called Soul Mountains, an epic novel about self-discovery and roots, autobiographical novel called One Man's Bible about his experience during the Cultural Revolution. His Nobel Prize is a super interesting fact of world literature and also a reflection on what it means to operate within world literature, as our course does. He wins it in 2000. The Chinese government had been under a long period of incentivizing writers to create work that would eventuate in a Nobel Prize. It was very important to the people, right, or to the People's Republic. They had basically just residency after residency, support stipends for writers. Somewhere along the way they gave up on this and started looking for international status through hosting the Olympics, through getting Nobels out of the science and economics categories. You would think that by the time he wins this award in 2000, the Chinese would rejoice that we won this award. In fact, what happens is, the response from Beijing, one of the officials from the capital says, "We are nonplussed. That man is a French writer." They basically have disowned the man entirely. Currently, the prize reads as going to France, not to China, and China had to wait until 2012 to win its first Nobel Prize through the writer Mo Yan, Moyan. This whole debacle here, the Nobel Prize of 2000, is more indicative of the Eurocentrism of the Nobel Award, right? Which is contingent upon being able to read in the language in which it's written. Not many people can in Sweden can read Mandarin, evidently. It also shows some of the prejudice of different kinds of styles of writing, which are more prevalent in Europe and in North America than they might be in Asia. It's not that there's better or worse, but there's a sense of prejudice for one kind of art over another. It also shows how world literature has the term itself, the organizing principle of our course, has a bit of a Eurocentrist kind of bias to it. So it's got this kind of metric that it's built in. Down here, third final historical item, the Cultural Revolution. is where Gao and several other playwrights, novelists, poets emerge out of the Cultural Revolution, which runs from 1962 to 1976. Odd kind of revolution. By 1949, 13 years prior, the Civil War had ended. Mao was ascendant. They have a communist nation now. But in the early 60s, Mao decides that aristocratic ideas persist even if the government is run by communists. So they engage in a culture war, a war of ideas. It's not really about taking the means of production from anybody. It's about like putting a stamp on what kinds of art, what kinds of intellectuals are allowed to pass throughout China. So it means policing artists, repressing very heavily the kinds of work that would be allowed to be presented in public through theater, published, etc. It meant a lot of systematic anti-intellectualism. Children from the age of like elementary school age all the way through college were policing their instructors for unorthodox ideas, right? So they would have put their instructors in dunce camps. Sometimes in the worst moments of the Cultural Revolution, they would be beating and torturing their instructors. There was so much shame wrought upon many of these instructors that like mass waves of suicides took place. And other violence kind of just spun out of control over the period of the revolution. As many as 2 million people died in this period, by the way, just like huge catastrophe that started out as like a trying to control ideas, wound up with like human cost, right? Gao, as you will sense very quickly, is returning to the theater of the absurd. He's a French writer, after all, according to the Beijing government. And he's borrowing some of the same kind of stuff that Beckett is up to. Why would he do that? Well, coming out of the Cultural Revolution, it might feel kind of similar to Beckett coming out of World War II. There might be a loss of meaning or a kind of inherent senselessness of life. Where does one derive meaning? Might be one of the kinds of questions. I think it's more to it than that, though. Because so much of the Cultural Revolution is about suppressing the very idea of an individual, right? In this kind of collectivist moment. Suppressing the very idea of individuals also has something to do with a sense of alienation and discord that the theater of the absurd can measure. So what I've been trying to say is that, this Cultural Revolution business is also productive of the same kind of transitory material, or transits the same kind of material as the theater of the absurd. So we'll be returning to the Beckett kind of stuff, like it or not. We have some writing that's coming up. Let me start this one more time. Sorry. Starting to thicken up. We have a piece of the second piece of short writing comes on Gao, and I encourage you all to email me with questions about the writing to help make it more effective. Email me with opportunities or to set up an appointment for Google Hangout. That would be excellent opportunity to... What are you doing? I told you to get back in the bunker! The bunker's where we're safe! Kids. Where were we? Google Hangouts. Google Hangouts would be a good opportunity to make the writing, more effective so that it can have the best possible product. I hope that wherever you guys are, speaking of the kind of like theater of the absurd that we all live in now, evidently, wherever you guys are, you are safe, provided for, and finding some ways to relax. We talked about pushing the social media stuff aside to have more, peace of mind and mindfulness. So please reach out with questions I can help you with on Gao, etc. And we will be back in touch again later.